The story begins with Masato exhausted. Masato had been an overworked office worker stuck in endless overtime. Every day he came home exhausted, collapsing onto his sofa, wondering if this was how the next 40 years of his life would go. He was in his second year as a corporate employee working as an on-site engineer. His workload was so heavy that unpaid overtime became unavoidable. The company had a way of brainwashing its employees with strict policies. His boss was laid back, but that only made things worse. It was the perfect setup for a toxic workplace. One by one, employees collapsed from exhaustion. Each time someone ended up in the hospital, the boss got angry and even cut their pay. Outside of work, Masato faced criticism for not having a better job, but this was the only company that had hired him. Over time, he got used to the struggle, though he was slowly losing his sense of purpose. Still, there was one thing that kept him going. Every day he picked up a small watering can and took care of his plants. Gardening was the only thing that gave him a reason to keep moving forward. He started this hobby in his first year at the company when he was at his lowest. One evening, after coming home completely drained, he saw a TV commercial featuring farmers. They smiled as they harvested their crops, looking truly happy. That image stuck with him, and he decided to start his own small home garden to experience that joy for himself. Now he remembered that one of his fruits was almost ripe and ready to harvest. He wondered if it would taste good. But then he noticed a cherry tomato with strange markings. Was it diseased? He hoped it wouldn't affect the rest of his plants. Without thinking too much, he tossed the weird tomato into his mouth and swallowed it. The moment he did, he froze. Why had he done that? His mind went blank as his consciousness started fading. A wave of panic hit him. Was it poisonous? Did it have some kind of instant effect? Before he could find an answer, everything around him turned to darkness. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in the middle of a forest. He wasn't in a hospital, nor was he at home. As he looked around, he noticed a floating status window on his right. It displayed his full name, his new job, various stats and numbers, a list of skills, and a special note saying he had eaten the Reincarnation fruit. His stats were all set at 5, making them look unbalanced and messy. His job had changed from a corporate worker to a farmer, which made no sense to him. Then it hit him. He had been reborn, and it was all because of that weak-looking tomato. At first, he thought he was just imagining things. He suspected that strange tomato had caused him to hallucinate. To prove it wasn't real, he walked up to a tree and smacked his head against it. But instead of snapping out of it, he just ended up hurting himself. Thinking it might have been a fluke, he tried hitting his head against other trees one after another. After taking too much pain, he finally had to accept the truth. This was real. He had really been reborn. Just then, he froze. A tiny girl, no bigger than a fist, suddenly appeared in front of him, smiling. Shocked, he fell to the ground, wondering if he was looking at a doll. The little girl flew toward him, looking excited. She said she could smell the scent of the Reincarnation tree on him. Before he could react, a robotic voice echoed in his mind, announcing that he had tamed a Dryad. The voice confirmed that the tiny girl in front of him was a Dryad, and somehow he had just made her his companion. At the same time, he suddenly felt refreshed, as if his energy had been restored. Confused, he quickly opened his status window. To his surprise, all of his stats had quadrupled. He could actually feel the difference in his body. The numbers weren't just for show, they were real. At that moment, he finally understood. This wasn't a dream or a hallucination. He had truly been reincarnated. Masato was suddenly called the Reincarnation Tree by a Dryad who asked him to follow her. Confused, he told her that he wasn't anything like that. He had only eaten the fruit, which looked more like a sickly tomato. Before he could process what was happening, more Dryads appeared. They had heard the first Dryad's words and could smell the Reincarnation Tree on him. Excited, they all gathered around and greeted him. At the same time, his system bombarded him with notifications confirming that he had successfully tamed all the Dryads nearby. Surrounded by the Dryads, Masato soon checked his status window and was shocked to see numbers so large they were now displayed as exponents. He had somehow tamed exactly 112 Dryads. As he thought about it, he realized that each Dryad had multiplied all 5 of his main stats by 4. The numbers had gone completely off the charts. He did some quick calculations in his head, but there was no need to explain the math since neither he nor anyone listening would probably understand it anyway. After figuring things out, Masato tried to make sense of the situation. For now, he decided to treat it as a hallucination and look for other people who might give him some clues. While scrolling through his status window, he noticed a flight skill. His intelligence stat was insanely high, and if he activated the skill, he might end up flying straight into space. On top of that, his MP was only at 10. If he used it all up, he might not survive. As Masato tried to find a safer way, a dragon suddenly appeared in the sky. Sensing something was wrong, he quickly moved to the side just in time to avoid an attack. It was a close call. The Dryads were blown away by the impact, but they didn't seem hurt. Masato was still trying to figure out what was happening when he realized that the dragon had come to attack him. However, when he looked closer, he noticed that its claws were chipped. It must have attacked him from behind but ended up injuring itself more than expected. An idea came to his mind. He could use the dragon to fly and reach human civilization. But first, he had to find a way to negotiate. The dragon suddenly opened its mouth and began gathering fire. Seeing it prepare to attack, Masato wondered if he had a way to counter it. He checked his skills and found two: barrier and spell break. He needed to stop the dragon's breath attack, and with his current abilities he felt like he had a chance. He had no choice but to try. Masato activated spell break on the dragon. The dragon let out a shocked growl. One of the Dryads translated, saying the dragon had just exclaimed, "Unbelievable!" Masato was surprised that the Dryad could understand the dragon and asked if she could interpret for him. With her help, something unexpected happened. Masato gained a new skill called automatic language translation. Curious about this new ability, Masato suddenly heard the dragon complaining about how a human had nullified her breath attack. He was now able to understand the dragon's words clearly. Realizing he could now communicate directly with her, he asked if she could hear and understand him. The dragon was shocked again, unable to believe that a human could speak her language. At that moment, Masato also realized that the translation skill worked both ways. Wasting no time, he told the dragon that he had a request. He asked if she could carry him into the sky. Masato knew he wasn't good at negotiating, so all he could do was ask directly, and hope she would listen to his simple request. Masato could understand the dragon's language, and she acknowledged this. However, she refused to grant a simple human's request. She told him not to make her laugh and prepared to unleash another breath of fire. Masato casually stopped it using spell break. He called her a noble creature but insisted that she should help someone in need. The dragon ignored him completely. Realizing there was no room for negotiation, Masato had to find a skill that could work against a dragon. He considered using force for two reasons. First, he was acting in self-defense, and even if it failed, the dragon attacked first. Second, if he was ignored, the town he was heading to might be in danger. While searching for a suitable skill, he came across nanofire. However, using such an intimidating spell could burn the dragon or destroy the forest. He preferred weaker spells, but in this situation he had no other choice. Without hesitation, he cast nanofire. At that moment, a massive pillar of fire shot up, piercing through the clouds and barely missing the dragon. Despite its simple name, the spell turned out to be surprisingly powerful. The dragon was shocked. She claimed that Masato had just used the legendary Last Atomic Inferno. Confused, Masato insisted he only cast nanofire since he didn't even have enough MP for such a powerful spell. The dragon called him a liar. She heard him say nanofire, but the scale of the spell was undoubtedly Last Atomic Inferno. To make things even more unbelievable, he had cast it without chanting. Masato realized that he didn't even know such advanced techniques. However, he noticed that the dragon misunderstood his magic as a high-level spell. Seeing that the dragon was now afraid, he decided to use this misunderstanding to his advantage. The dragon cried out, claiming that the world would end if someone could unleash such power with just nanofire. Masato remembered how proud the dragon had been earlier, but now it had turned into a coward, panicking over his magic. He also noticed that the dragon's way of speaking had become overly polite. Despite its massive and intimidating size, it now looked rather pitiful. Still, as long as it could fly, that was all that mattered to him. Masato asked again if the dragon could take him into the sky. The dragon eagerly agreed, saying it would be happy to help. Masato reminded her not to push herself too hard, especially if they had to travel a long distance. In response, the dragon scoffed and told him not to underestimate it, boasting that it could cross the entire continent in just half a day. Masato felt relieved when he realized the dragon could fly as fast as a passenger plane. He climbed onto her back, holding on tightly as she took off. However, as the dragon soared into the sky, he accidentally peeled off one of her scales. The sudden movement caused him to lose his grip, and he was thrown off, crashing to the ground. The dragon only noticed when she heard a loud thud behind her. She quickly apologized for not realizing sooner. Fortunately, Masato felt no pain, thanks to his status. It was a bit of luck in an otherwise unlucky situation. The dragon also apologized for letting her scale come off. Masato asked her to stop bowing since the Dryads nearby might get hit. However, he was more concerned about the scale itself. The dragon reassured him that it was fine. It had been loose and about to fall off anyway. As an apology, she offered it to him, explaining that dragon scales were valuable in the human world. Masato happily accepted it, already planning to sell it later. Then, he remembered something from his skill list and activated storage. A portal appeared and absorbed the dragon scale. It registered as Crimson Dragon's scale and instructed Masato to chant item box whenever he wanted to check or retrieve his stored items. This time, they finally left the forest and Masato rode on the dragon's back once more. As they soared through the sky, he looked over the horizon. While scanning the area, he noticed farms on the outskirts of the land. At that moment, he He felt like he might be able to live the peaceful life he had always wanted in this world. He wasn't sure why, but the feeling was strong. Soon, Masato spotted a town and asked the dragon to hover above it. However, the dragon refused, saying it wasn't a good idea and suggested landing near the town gates instead. After they landed, Masato thanked the dragon for the ride. The dragon didn't mind at all and was happy to help him anytime in the future. Masato was glad to hear that, but he had no way to contact the dragon again. One of the Dryads offered to stay with the dragon. Masato asked if she could still communicate with the others from a distance, and she confirmed that she could. Satisfied with her answer, Masato allowed her to stay while the rest followed him. The other Dryads happily agreed. After getting off the dragon's back, Masato and the Dryads tested their communication. The dragon confirmed that the message had been sent. She then said she would head home and told Masato to contact her whenever needed. Masato assured her that he would call for her help when the time came. Once the dragon left, he turned his attention to the nearby town and started walking toward it, followed by hundreds of Dryads. Meanwhile, the dragon arrived at her home. Before entering her cave, she asked the Dryad to watch her as she wanted to try something. She had come up with an idea after observing Masato. Flying high into the sky, she suddenly began to glow. Her claws changed into human hands and her body transformed into that of a young girl. She turned to the Dryad and asked how her human transformation magic looked. Masato saw the guards panicking. They started packing their things after the dragon left, thinking they were going to die. He quickly realized they had misunderstood the situation. He called out to them and asked if he could enter the town. The guards calmed down and asked for his family crest. Masato was confused and asked what they meant by a crest. The guards explained that nobles had family crests. When he told them he wasn't a noble, they looked surprised. They had assumed he was one because of the way he spoke and how he had driven the dragon away. They thought he might be some kind of noble knight. Masato wondered if his way of speaking really sounded like a noble. Then he realized it was probably because of his language automatic translation skill. His polite Japanese was being translated into noble speech in this world. To test it, he changed his tone, and the guards confirmed he now sounded like a commoner. Speaking casually felt a bit awkward for him, but it was better than being mistaken for a noble. He reassured the guards that the dragon wasn't a big deal. He had scared it off with nanofire, which was why it gave him a ride. The guards were shocked to hear that the dragon was treated like transportation, and that a simple nanofire had scared it away. Somehow, they misunderstood again. Masato then asked once more how he could enter the town. The guards handed him a ring, explaining that it was a magical tracking tool. He could remove it once he registered for an ID at the guild. They told him it was necessary for public order. Masato realized it worked like a jeeps and thanked them for their help. Before entering, he asked one last thing: if the guards could see the small dolls with wings hovering around him. The guards looked confused and asked what he was talking about. The Dryads smirked. Masato quickly understood. These girls were invisible to others. Masato arrived in Badella town and headed straight to the guild the guards had mentioned to get an ID. As he walked through the town, he soon spotted the agriculture guild. He never expected to find such a place right away. For someone who had worked himself to exhaustion in the past, hoping for a peaceful life, it almost felt like destiny. Inside, a cheerful young woman greeted him and asked how she could help. Masato asked if this was the right place to get an ID. She confirmed that it was and explained that she would need to collect his ring after issuing the card. Then she asked if he was sure about joining the agriculture guild. Masato confirmed his decision, thinking it might be useful for his new life. She handed him a form to fill out with his information. As he waited for his ID, he felt relieved that providing an address was optional. A short while later, the girl called his full name and handed him his agriculture guild membership card. Curious, she asked which part of Shindo Masato was his last name. She assumed Shindo was the last name and Masato was the first. Masato asked if that was unusual and admitted he came from a place with a different naming system. In response, she decided to call him Masato. As a Japanese person, he felt a little embarrassed being addressed so casually by his first name. The girl then reminded him about the guild registration fee of 1,000 ether and told him he needed to pay it before removing his ring and accepting the card. Masato understood and promised to prepare the amount soon. Then he asked where he could sell a dragon scale that Himari had dropped. The girl looked confused, wondering how someone like him even had such an item. She explained that rare materials like that were handled by the Adventurers Guild, which worked like a pawn shop. Masato then asked about the average monthly living cost for a single person. The girl told him it was around 30,000 ether and assured him that a dragon scale would definitely be worth more than the registration fee. Masato assumed that 1 ether was equal to 1 yen. He thought he would be fine as long as he had enough money, but soon, he ran into another problem. At the Adventurers Guild, the employees panicked when they saw the dragon scale. They needed to measure the amount of dragonium in it to determine its value. When they checked, They found it contained 0.0005 G per 1 ml. This result shocked them because a dragon's dragonium level matched its rank. A scale with this much dragonium could only come from an ancient dragon. Masato couldn't believe that the dragon, who dramatically called herself the Flaming Crimson Dragon, was actually an ancient one. However, he was more focused on the dragonium amount. He pointed out that 0.0005 G per 1 ml seemed too low. But the guild employees immediately shouted at him, saying it was actually a huge amount. They explained that the scale would be valued at 8.1 million ether. After that, Masato went to the Agriculture Guild to discuss the registration fee and buying farmland. The receptionist understood his request and asked him to remove his ring. She confirmed that they did offer land purchases, but she also lectured him about how buying farmland wasn't something to rush into. She explained that renting would cost 54,000 ether per acre per year, while buying would cost 900,000 ether per acre. She advised him to start with rentals since they were much cheaper. Masato found the idea tempting. If he rented land, he could experiment with different things on a large field without spending too much. He told the receptionist he would go with the rental option. She then asked if he was ready to choose a location and showed him some available lands from a booklet, selecting options that suited the current season. Masato decided to start with tomatoes and soybeans, the same crops he had grown back in elementary school. He made an initial payment of 220,000 ether. He thanked the girl for her help, but she then asked if he was a wanderer. She warned him that managing the farmland alone would be too difficult. Masato assured her that he had connections, though the Dryads didn't understand what he meant. After handling several tasks and renting an apartment, Masato looked out the window and decided to begin farming the next day. In just half a day, the life he had dreamed of was starting to take shape. The next morning, he went to the farmland he had rented. It was quite far from town, but being on the outskirts made it easier to call for help if needed. Just then, the dragon arrived, but she was nowhere to be seen. Masato searched through his skill list and activated Enhance Vision. Finally, he could see her. The two exchanged greetings, and she thanked him for using the invisibility spell on her through the Dryad. Because of that ability, she was able to approach the town without being noticed. Masato was relieved that it had worked and then asked if he could ride on her back right away. Masato flew over the farmland and used the illumination spell to draw lines on the field before landing. He then asked the dragon to mix the soil in some areas and use the special material they had prepared. The dragon happily agreed and activated her storage magic. A cloud of black, foggy dust spread across the fields. The night before, Masato had asked the dragon to make wood ash by burning a distant grassland. A Dryad later confirmed that it was the best ash she had ever seen. Curious, Masato asked why. The Dryad explained that the dragon's dung was full of nutrients which would help the crops grow strong. Masato hadn't expected such an effect. He stretched his arms, preparing to make furrows next. The dragon asked if furrows were the wavy patterns found in human fields. She then suggested letting her handle it. Masato suddenly realized she had claws. Without hesitation, she traced the field with them, creating perfectly shaped furrows. Masato was amazed that such a large creature could perform such a delicate task so easily. He figured she must have a high dexterity stat. Meeting the dragon in this world had been a fortunate experience. He then asked her to make an even number of furrows before they took a lunch break. After the fieldwork, the dragon suggested that they formally introduce themselves since she didn't want to be called just dragon or be referred to by her species. Masato then realized that she was actually the Flaming Crimson Dragon after storing her scales. The dragon confirmed that it was her name but admitted that she found it embarrassing. She wanted a better name. Masato thought it would be pointless to introduce herself if she was embarrassed by her own name. He jokingly suggested calling her Doraemon since dragon sounded similar. The dragon immediately rejected it, reminding him that she was a girl and wanted a cuter name. Masato hadn't even realized she was female until then. After thinking for a moment, he went through a list of girl names in his head. Eventually, he suggested the name Himari. The dragon's expression softened with relief and happiness. She found the name unusual but liked it. Then she asked for Masato's name. This time Masato properly introduced himself and told her to call him Masato. The dragon understood. Masato and the others kept working in the fields. While planting, he suddenly realized he had an infinite dexterity stat. Curious, he wondered if simply tossing the seeds would make them land perfectly. He gave it a try, and to his surprise, every seed fell evenly across the field. The Dryads, amazed by his precision, gave his seed throwing a perfect score. Himari, shocked, asked how he managed to throw them like that. She had noticed something strange about their trajectory. Looking closer, she saw that the seeds were stuck in the ground at exactly 20 centimeters deep. She couldn't believe Masato had such an unusual skill. He felt a little guilty for making her feel inferior, but he quickly moved on and asked everyone to start watering. The Dryads offered to handle it, explaining that they could make it rain. Masato trusted them with the task and they began praying. Soon after, a cloud appeared above the field and started to rain. Seeing this, Masato commented on how predictable it was and wondered if there were more mysterious skills like this waiting to be discovered. Curious, he used his appraisal skill on the cloud. The results showed that it was the blessing rain cloud of the Dryads, a special cloud that appeared only when the Dryads prayed. The water from this cloud greatly enriched the soil and improved plant growth. Masato was amazed that such a powerful ability existed for farming. He thanked Himari and the Dryads for their help and told the dragon to return home. Himari nodded and told him to call her anytime. With everything planted and watered, the only task left was harvesting. Farming was going smoothly and Masato felt like he could live peacefully in this world. However, there was one thing that bothered him. He missed Japanese food. Even the simplest dish would satisfy his cravings, but this world lacked essential ingredients like soy sauce, vinegar, miso, mirin, and even rice. He thought about growing soybeans to make soy sauce and miso. As he considered his options, he suddenly realized there was a dish he could make right away. The next day in the mountains, Masato knee-kicked a charging boar and knocked it out. He frowned at Himari and reminded her that he had asked for a mountain with wild vegetables, not wild animals. Himari, looking confused, pointed out that he had no trouble dealing with the boars anyway. Masato and the others had come to the mountain to gather ingredients for chawanmushi, a savory egg custard. He already had eggs but needed mountain vegetables and mushrooms to recreate the dish. That was why he asked Himari to bring them there. As he thought about his ingredients, he wondered if the boar could be useful for the meal as well. While storing the boar in his storage, something caught his eye in a nearby tree. He looked closer and recognized Japanese wild parsley and oyster mushrooms. He realized he was off to a good start. Just then, Himari called him over, excitedly claiming she had found some delicious mushrooms. However, when Masato saw them, he immediately recognized them as fly agaric mushrooms, which were poisonous. These mushrooms contained toxic substances like ibotenic acid and muscimol. Masato was speechless for a moment before warning Himari about how dangerous they were. Himari, unfazed, told him not to worry and reminded him about his vitality stat. She also mentioned that the flavor of the mushroom was surprisingly intense. Masato hesitated, recalling that while the mushroom was toxic, ibotenic acid was known to enhance umami flavor. Some even claimed it was 10 times stronger than glutamic acid, the usual source of umami. Mushroom enthusiasts sometimes took a bite just to experience the taste before spitting it out. If people could ignore the fact that it was poisonous, it would actually make for an incredible ingredient. Masato decided to gather some ingredients. Himari agreed that it was a great idea. A Dryad then mentioned that she had found something tasty. Following her lead, Masato discovered a citrus fruit from the yuzu family known for its strong aroma. He thought it would be the perfect topping for the chawanmushi. With that, he had everything he needed and told Himari that they would head back. The dragon then said she wanted to try whatever Masato was making with the gathered ingredients. Masato agreed that it was a good idea. However, when they returned to the city, they forgot to use invisibility on Himari, causing the guards to panic. After dealing with the commotion, Masato focused on cooking. He had all the ingredients in front of him: processed wild boar meat, oyster mushrooms, a seasoning he created using a skill, eggs from the market, citrus, and wild parsley. To make the chawanmushi, he first beat the eggs and prepared 3 times the amount of broth. Using alchemy, he processed the inedible parts of the wild boar to create a seasoning, which he dissolved in water to make the broth. He then mixed the broth with the eggs in a bowl, ensuring a smooth texture by popping the bubbles on the surface. Next, he placed the meat and mushrooms in a cup before pouring the egg mixture in, filling it up to 80%. Since there were no steamers in this world, Masato used a frying pan instead. He added water, placed the cups inside, and applied heat. Without aluminum foil, he used barrier magic as a substitute. 10 minutes later, he removed the heat and tilted the cups. If the liquid inside was transparent, it meant the dish was cooked. Finally, he placed a slice of citrus fruit on the edge of each cup. The chawanmushi was now complete. Masato stepped onto the balcony and told Himari that the dish was ready. But then he wondered how the dragon would manage to eat such a small portion. With her size, it would be difficult. Himari told him to wait for a moment. Then she lit up the sky with a bright glow. Using her transformation magic, she changed into a small human girl. Masato stood frozen in shock as she gently landed on the balcony. She asked him how her human form looked. He could hardly believe it, but with her new size, they could now share a meal together. Himari looked proud of herself. They moved to the table and Masato served the dish. Before eating, they both gave thanks for the food. Himari was about to take the first bite when Masato stopped her. He told her to wait and squeeze the citrus over the dish first, explaining that it would enhance the flavor. After adding the lime, they both took a spoonful. It was delicious. Masato commented on how the texture was perfect with the parsley and mushrooms. Himari also enjoyed the smooth, rich taste in her mouth. Masato's eyes teared up. This was exactly the food he had been craving. He scooped up a mushroom and ate it. The moment he tasted it, he froze. A realization hit him hard. He had never experienced such strong umami before. Now he understood why mushroom lovers became obsessed with poisonous mushrooms. Without hesitation, he used detox magic to remove the poison. Thanks to magic, he could safely enjoy this flavor in this world. He also noticed that the poison had no effect on Himari. With that worry gone, the two continued eating, chatting as they enjoyed the rest of their meal. After the meal, Himari commented on how good of a cook Masato was. He asked if she wanted more, and Himari said yes. She then asked if he could keep one for later in the storage, which would make her happy. Masato promised he would do that next time. After that, he saw her off. With that, Masato realized that with a little creativity, he could enjoy food in this world even more. The next day, Masato went window shopping since he had some free time. He noticed some steaks that he could use in the future, but they were a bit expensive. With the size of his field, it would cost him a lot. However, if he made the steaks himself, he could save money. Just then, Carol from the Agriculture Guild showed up. Masato thanked her for her previous help and asked why she was in the area. Carol explained that she had a home garden and was shopping because it was the guild's day off. She then offered to show him around the store since, as a guild staff member, she wanted her customers to succeed. Masato quickly agreed, and Carol seemed pleased. Masato thought this world still had many surprises and unknown things to discover. Carol showed him some magic tools. One was a seed invasion barrier to prevent weeds, and another was a sprinkler magic tool for easy watering. However, Masato felt that the Dryads' Rain of Blessing was enough for him. He told Carol that he could control rain clouds. Since others couldn't see the Dryads, he had to come up with an explanation. Carol was so surprised by Masato's otherworldly ability that she didn't know how to respond. He suddenly noticed something familiar, a can of liquid fertilizer. He wondered why it existed in this world. The city was still not very industrialized, and the process to turn nitrogen and hydrogen into ammonia for fertilizer should not have been developed yet. As he wondered how it was made, Carol overheard him and explained that the liquid fertilizers were drops from the dungeon. Masato was surprised to hear something from the games he played. Carol also mentioned that there were growth enhancers which helped crops grow faster. With a can containing 5,000 ether, an acre of crops could grow 5 days faster. Masato looked a bit disappointed, so Carol asked what was wrong. Masato had hoped it was for instant harvests like in the games. Carol asked him to explain and clarified that these were only used during the harvest season. Masato thought it was expensive for such a small benefit. The cost didn't seem very worth it. Carol explained that only wealthy farmers could afford the enhancers and still make a profit from them. But since Masato had a dragon scale, she suggested he might be able to gather things in the dungeon himself. Later in the dungeon, Masato added different buffs to his sword to make it sharper and more durable. He only had 10 MP, so he knew he should focus on physical attacks, but he also wondered how much effort he needed to put in to get the growth-promoting agents. Just then, Himari appeared and asked why he had brought her to a dungeon. She thought Masato could handle it alone. Masato explained that he would appreciate it if Himari could hunt anything she found, so he could hunt safely on his own. He also asked her to come along as a reference. Himari felt a bit hurt because she had always thought Masato saw her differently. It turned out that her strong presence as a dragon scared the monsters, making it easier for Masato. Masato then said they would go deeper into the dungeon if no monsters appeared, which Himari couldn't avoid. He opened his status window and activated a skill. He thought it would be convenient to have an elevator in the dungeon. The system confirmed the start of the construction, and suddenly the dungeon shook. The two of them noticed something coming out of the ground. An elevator appeared, with wires attaching to the ceiling. The door opened, and somehow Masato's skill, master-level architecture, worked. Himari was left speechless and confused. Masato simply said he had created a lift. Himari complained that Masato was messing with the dungeon structure too easily. The two went down in the elevator until they ran into enemies they could fight. On the 80th floor, a giant bear monster blocked their way. Masato asked if it was stronger than Himari, but the dragon girl said it wasn't. She told him he had a 1 in 100 chance of defeating it while it was sleeping. In that moment, Masato went for the bear's neck. The monster instantly fell dead and a card dropped from it. Himari was confused and asked what had just happened and what Masato had done. Masato said he only took advantage of its weak points. He then checked the card that dropped. It was a card to summon wyverns, which could be used for transportation and had a large storage magic. Masato asked if this kind of card only came from the bear. Himari explained that monsters of the same level could drop the same item. Masato wondered if she was talking about the crocodile monster that had just appeared. Himari couldn't respond because Masato was already gone. He quickly sliced the crocodile's neck with precision. Himari complained about how fast he acted. Then an item appeared that could create a small vinyl house perfect for growing plants. Masato was surprised at how useful it was. Himari asked if it could also grow alhilda. Masato guessed it was a mushroom based on the name. Himari explained that alhildeca mushrooms were used to cure white mage's disease, one of the 5 deadly epidemics. She then shared that her mother had the disease and only had 300 years left to live. She had almost given up hope. However, if she could grow alhildeca mushrooms, there was a chance to save her mother. Masato was excited about growing the mushrooms. However, he still needed a growth enhancer and wondered if alhildeca mushrooms had spores. Himari said they were everywhere but hard to grow. Masato then mentioned the deadly botulinum bacteria, the deadliest poison on Earth. Anyway, the two continued their dungeon conquest. Even a fierce and fast mimic monster didn't stand a chance against Masato. The monster dropped a dubbing card which could copy any item found inside the dungeon. Himari then said all the monsters on the floor had been defeated. The growth accelerator was still missing, so the two went deeper into the dungeon, heading toward more dangerous floors. On the 81st floor, they quickly encountered a snake monster. It was quickly turned into sashimi and dropped something familiar. Masato's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't believe it. It was the growth accelerator he had been looking for. This one could speed up 3 months of growth and adjust the growth period by dilution. The one he saw in the store was different, but this one would let him harvest crops in his field instantly. Just then, Himari noticed something above them. A glass lizard, a creature with a body made of glass, was stuck to the ceiling, glaring at them. Masato asked Himari about its abilities. She explained that it could shed its glass skin and the fragments would explode dangerously. Masato wondered if they should set up a trap. He was worried about fighting something made of glass with his sword. However, since the lizard had already noticed them, Masato had no choice but to fight. Surprisingly, the glass lizard was easily sliced into pieces and fell to the ground. Masato was glad he managed to defeat it. For some reason, Himari acted proud of how sharp and strong Masato's sword was. The monster dropped a glass shoe called Cinderella Clinic. It could turn anyone into a beautiful woman for life when worn. However, if a man wore it, he would turn into a beautiful woman, not a handsome man. Masato called the glass shoe useless and decided to go home for now. Himari asked if they wouldn't explore more since it seemed like a waste. Masato made it clear that he wasn't serious about being an adventurer. Outside the dungeon, the two parted ways. Himari asked Masato to call her when he would be using the vinyl house. Later in the city, Masato realized he should sell some items he wouldn't use, like the glass shoe. He stopped by the Adventurers Guild, and the same staff member who had processed the dragon scale recognized him. She picked up the glass shoe and said she wouldn't be surprised if it was the legendary momentary glitter of Cinderella. She excused herself, saying she would appraise it in the back. Just a minute later, Masato heard shouting from the back. The guild staff returned and told him it was a top-tier version of the item she had mentioned. She said it was an item that could affect relationships between nobles and royalty. She asked where Masato had gotten it. He explained it was from the 81st floor of the dungeon. She asked for more details about the location. Then she used a lie detection magic item on him and confirmed that he was telling the truth. Masato was surprised. She thought he might be lying. Just then, a man with an eye patch appeared after hearing about the 81st floor. He asked if Masato was the one who had just returned from the dungeon and if he knew about the strange, unknown structure that had recently appeared there. Masato asked if they were talking about the elevator and said it was too troublesome to move between floors, so he had made it himself. They were shocked by how ordinary his reason sounded, but it was considered outrageous because of what he had done. Masato wondered if the elevator was a bad idea and offered to remove it, but the guild said they wanted to open it to the public instead. They offered Masato an annual license fee of 3 million ether. Masato didn't mind them using it, but he wondered if the guild would be able to pay such a large amount. He asked them to transfer the license fee and the payment for the glass shoe through the Agriculture Guild. Outside, Masato let out a sigh. He couldn't believe how things had turned out. Still, his money had increased, so it was time for some shopping. As he walked, he wondered how his status window looked now. Masato's status window had become more balanced, with his HP at 25,500 and his MP at 4,500. He was just glad that his MP had increased. Now, he didn't have to worry about running out of magical power or using magic while working in the fields. Later, while working in the fields, he wondered how to use the growth-promoting agent he had received. The Dryads offered to mix the liquid properly and told him to pour it into the rain clouds. As the clouds moved closer, 2 openings appeared. Masato was surprised, but still went ahead and poured the liquid into the holes. He couldn't even ask the Dryads why the clouds had inlets in the first place. Once filled, the rain clouds hovered over the fields and showered the plants with the growth enhancer. Within seconds, the saplings started growing at an incredible speed. Masato was amazed. It was like watching a fast-forwarded video. However, the plants grew so tall that they needed support. He quickly used gravity manipulation to keep them upright since he hadn't built any support pillars yet. The plants kept growing until they produced fresh, nearly ripe tomatoes. Masato was impressed. The soybeans and edamame were also ready to be harvested. Masato decided to harvest half of the crops. He asked the Dryads for help, and they happily agreed. While they worked on harvesting, he bought support pillars for the tomatoes. He then asked some of the Dryads to help support the plants as he set up the pillars. They did their best to assist him. Since the growth enhancer had a cooldown of 4 days, he suggested waiting before harvesting the rest. 4 days later, they finished gathering all the tomatoes and soybeans. Back in his apartment, Masato checked the stored vegetables in his item box. There were 20 tons of tomatoes, 892 kilograms of edamame, and 984 kilograms of soybeans. Taking the opportunity, he used appraisal to check their details. What he discovered left him in shock. The tomatoes were called everlasting tomatoes. They contained a powerful anti-aging ingredient, and eating just 100 grams per week could completely stop aging. They also had the best possible flavor. The soybeans were called Divine Eye black beans. They had a special ingredient that greatly improved vision, and consuming 100 grams per week would enhance eyesight to twice the normal level, and grant the telescope skill. Like the tomatoes, they also had the highest quality taste. Stunned, Masato wondered what was going on. Masato tasted the raw tomato and found it so delicious that he didn't want to stop eating it. As expected, it was top quality. He also realized that storing it in the item box would keep it fresh. For now, he decided to keep some for himself and sell the rest at the guild. At the guild, Masato unloaded everything he planned to sell. Carol was shocked by the huge harvest. She couldn't believe a beginner like him had gathered so much in just 2 weeks. Masato explained that half of his success was thanks to Carol because she had told him about the dungeon. He then showed her the growth accelerator he found there and explained how it sped up plant growth by 3 months. Carol was so confused that her mind went blank. She wasn't sure if she had heard minutes or months, and she decided it was best to pretend she hadn't heard anything at all. For now, she focused on sorting the harvest. Using a skill called sorting telekinesis, she made some of the produce float in the air as it got organized. Masato guessed the skill was used to sort crops by quality. Carol was amazed to see that every single item was perfectly healthy, with no signs of disease or damage. An old man walked over and asked if these were the legendary vegetables. Then he started examining them. Masato didn't think they were anything special. However, the old man suddenly panicked and shook Masato, demanding to know how he grew them. Masato simply said he used normal seeds. Carol added that she was the one who sold him those seeds. The old man then concluded that a legendary fairy, a Dryad, must have used their power to help. Masato was left speechless, but the Dryad he brought with him was even more shocked. Trying to lighten the mood, Masato jokingly said that maybe the Dryad helped him on a whim. Carol was confused since Dryads were supposed to be just fairy tale creatures. The old man also found it hard to believe that legendary fairies would be friendly with humans. Meanwhile, the very creature they were talking about was standing right there in the room. Despite their doubts, Masato thought it made sense. He figured that the rain from the blessings of the Dryad must have had a real effect. That rain had the power to enhance plants, making their nutrients even stronger than normal. Carol said they needed a special merchant just for Masato's produce. Masato didn't understand and asked what she meant. Carol explained that an exclusive merchant was someone who handled high-quality goods separately from regular ones, selling them at a fair price. She pointed out that Masato's tomatoes had a special effect. They could extend a person's lifespan. Because of this, they couldn't be mixed with ordinary goods. She also said this system would protect Masato since valuable crops like his might attract dangerous people. By paying a large fee to the exclusive merchant, they would ensure his information stayed safe. Masato agreed. Considering his status, he didn't expect any issues, but he still told the Dryads to inform him if they saw any suspicious people near his home. One of the Dryads assured him they would handle it. The old man then said he would inform the guildmaster and arrange for a trustworthy exclusive merchant from the guild. At that moment, a hooded man named Cole appeared. Carol immediately said he was the perfect person for the situation. He introduced himself as a special traveling merchant and explained that he had a skill called mystification. He assured Masato that he could be trusted. Masato asked what mystification was, and Carol explained that it was the ability to turn into mist and move freely through the air. Cole also had a younger sister with a unique ability. To protect her from a criminal organization that wanted to use her powers, he captured members of the group and tried to get information from them. While being held and refusing to reveal any secrets, he awakened his mystification skill. He turned into mist, escaped, and raised an alarm at their base. Masato found the story intense and wanted to help him. He then remembered that he had obtained some valuable items that were popular among merchants. Masato greeted Cole and gave him a card as a sign of appreciation. Cole was shocked. Carol recognized the item and excitedly said it was the Wyvern Circulation card. The elder said there were only 5 of these cards, and they were considered relics from an ancient civilization. Cole agreed that this was one of the best items for transportation, but it was so rare that it was usually only used in national emergencies. Masato asked if that was really the case. Carol replied that if he used it, he could end up in history books. After that, they exchanged contracts and said goodbye to Cole. To ensure his safety, Masato assigned a Dryad to accompany him. They also finalized the profit distribution. Masato would receive 75%, while Cole and the guild would get 20% and 5% respectively. The middleman's share was slightly higher, but since Cole was taking some risks, it seemed fair. Before leaving the guild, Masato asked Carol if she could sell him some wheat seeds. Carol didn't mind, but she was confused because wheat was out of season. She told Masato about it, but he had his own plans. He returned to his field, planning to grow whatever he wanted using growth enhancers. He was craving tempura, so he decided to start farming. Through the Dryads, he called Himari and shared his plan to clean up the field before growing Alhilda mushrooms. But first he had to deal with some withered crops. The Dryads told him to leave it to the rain. Masato didn't understand what they meant, so he asked. Instead of explaining, they told him to watch. Suddenly rain clouds formed and it started to rain. As the water touched the withered plants, they began to dissolve. This was another ability of the Dryads' rain clouds. They could break down dead plants and make the soil richer. If the rain fell on the field, compost wouldn't be needed for the next planting cycle. Masato was amazed, and the Dryads were happy to be praised. A moment later, Himari arrived and asked if he was done cleaning the field. Masato then picked a spot to set up a greenhouse. When he used the item, the small package shook and suddenly transformed into a greenhouse. He found it very convenient and suggested going inside. Once inside, he asked Himari if she had brought Alhilda mushroom spores. Himari simply pointed to a nearby stone, saying the spores were scattered there. Masato was confused since he couldn't see anything. Himari told him to look more closely because the spores were attached to the stone. Masato used a skill called microscope and was surprised to see tiny spores covering the stone. He hadn't realized they were everywhere. He asked if he just needed to cultivate them like that, and Himari confirmed it. When Masato entered the greenhouse, the system asked if he wanted to use the spores to grow a plant. Without hesitation, he confirmed and placed the stone in the center. The system then told him to wait outside while the greenhouse adjusted its environment. Soon the inside of the greenhouse started changing. The weeds inside began to wither and die. Masato had a strong feeling that the greenhouse was now filled with toxic gas at high temperature and pressure. Himari confirmed that this was the right environment for growing Alhilda mushrooms. However, Masato needed to go inside to use the growth enhancer. Himari assured him that he would be fine, but Masato wasn't sure where her confidence came from. To test the environment, he picked up a metal drum and threw it at the greenhouse entrance. The drum was instantly crushed flat and melted from the intense heat. Himari confirmed that it was not a place where humans could survive. Masato wondered what to do next. Himari then suggested that he use an auto-heal skill, and since there was no oxygen inside, he would have to hold his breath. Following her advice, Masato activated a skill called Auto Care from his skill list. To make sure he survived, he also activated HP Lock, which would prevent him from losing all his health. Himari watched him go and warned him to be careful. As soon as Masato stepped inside, he felt dizzy. The gas immediately broke through his body's defenses against the extreme heat and pressure. The environment was completely different from the outside. He wondered if he was able to endure it because of his support skills and high vitality stat. He also thought about what would happen if he lacked even one of those things. Still, he had no time to waste. Since he could only hold his breath for so long, he had to find the spores quickly. Using his microscope skill, he immediately spotted them. He rushed toward the rock where the spores were. As he opened the growth enhancer, he noticed more spores growing nearby. It seemed like they had been there from the start. Since he was already there, he decided to grow those as well. After some time, Masato safely left the greenhouse. He managed to get out somehow. He asked Himari how long it would take for an Alhilda mushroom to grow and produce fruit. She said it would take a year and 3 months. Since Masato had already used the growth enhancer, he realized he had 4 more cycles left, meaning the mushrooms would be ready in 16 days. Himari was confused, so Masato explained that with the growth enhancers they had, they could harvest the mushrooms much sooner. This meant they could heal Himari's mother earlier than expected. Almira felt happy after hearing the good news. She said she would prepare the rest of the medicinal ingredients. Masato promised that he would create a special cure and help Himari's mother. Meanwhile, in a cave deep in the forest, a horned woman coughed weakly. Her sickly appearance and horns suggested that she was Himari's mother. Not long after, Himari and Masato traveled to the Viling Sea, the coldest sea ever known. Masato thanked her as the freezing temperature would help him with something. His goal this time was to cook tempura. Since he had already finished exploring the wheat planting dungeon, he decided to gather ingredients for tempura while waiting for the Alhilda mushrooms to grow. When he looked down, he noticed that he couldn't see the seawater because of the thick ice covering it. Without warning, he jumped off Himari's back, clenched his fist, and punched the ice. The thick layer shattered instantly. Himari was shocked. She couldn't believe that the so-called unbreakable perpetual sea ice had been broken for the first time in history. Masato then asked why she had brought him to such a place. Himari simply said that the seafood there was plentiful. However, neither of them noticed a tentacle creeping behind Masato. Himari explained that no one had ever tried fishing in this sea before. But before she could finish, Masato had already disappeared. Meanwhile, Masato found himself underwater, trapped by a tentacle. His face stiffened as he looked down at the massive squid below him. Its eye alone was enormous. Thinking fast, he used flight magic and shot out of the water, still caught in the tentacle. Himari, seeing this, assumed a monster was lurking below. Just then, the creature surfaced and Masato remarked that this was quite the catch. Since they had come all this way, he decided to reel it in. Using his flight magic, he began pulling the giant monster out of the water. Sensing danger, the squid fought back, attacking with its other tentacles. Masato quickly broke free and dodged its strikes. He recalled that a squid could be paralyzed by chopping the base of its head. Though unsure if this information was true, he pulled the monster toward him anyway. The giant squid was helpless in midair. Masato then delivered a powerful hand chop at the base of its head, just above the eye. The monster was knocked out instantly. Without hesitation, Masato used his storage magic to store it away. Himari was confused and shocked. The squid was only half dead and storage magic was supposed to work only on dead things. However, Masato confirmed that his storage treated the paralyzed squid as dead because the definition of death was unclear. Himari couldn't believe that even the rules of storage magic changed when it came to Masato. She felt powerless compared to him. Masato didn't understand what she meant. Instead, he decided to use flight to go underwater since it had worked earlier. He dove deep into the sea and saw many sea creatures around him. Schools of smelts and horse mackerels swam nearby. As he moved to catch a few, a large fish suddenly appeared behind him. The smaller fish scattered in fear. To his surprise, it was a tuna. Seeing the perfect opportunity, Masato took out his sword from his item box and swam toward it. With a precise strike, he stabbed the tuna and caught it instantly. While planning to catch more fish, he noticed a shrimp. This reminded him of his craving for tempura shrimp, so he decided to catch some as well. After a while, Masato emerged from the water with a plentiful catch. Himari was impressed. Masato agreed and asked her for a ride to the market so he could have the fish processed there. Later at the harbor market, a shopkeeper refused to process the fish because they only worked with loyal fishing boats. Masato understood and decided to try somewhere else. However, the store manager stopped him and asked to see more of the fish he had caught. Masato then showed the tuna he had caught. The manager and his employee were impressed by how fat and fresh it looked. The manager explained that they only sourced from their loyal clients, but the tuna was better than their usual stock. He offered to process the fish if Masato allowed them to keep part of the fillet. Masato asked if they were sure, and the manager even offered to waive the fee depending on the amount. Masato thanked him. The manager assumed that Masato had caught the tuna in an exceptional fishing spot. Masato mentioned there were other fish caught there too and asked if they could process those as well. He opened his item box and brought out a tentacle from a giant squid. The manager was shocked by how huge it was. Masato wondered if it would be hard for them to process. The manager asked to take a closer look at his storage magic. He noticed that the giant squid had bluish-tinted ears and amber eyes. It turned out to be a kraken, and the manager couldn't believe Masato had something like this. Masato casually explained that he had chopped it up and paralyzed it. The manager then asked if Masato was even human. Masato wondered why the reaction was so strong. Himari explained that the kraken was a legendary squid. The manager assumed it could be processed, and he was eager to do so. He begged Masato to let them process it, since kraken was considered a delicacy. After a few hours, the tuna and kraken were processed, and the manager also processed the smelts and mackerel for free. Masato thanked them, but they were even more grateful. Masato told Himari that he had something to do and asked her to take him to a nearby sea. Himari was confused but still brought him to a place by the water. Masato found a good spot and Himari asked what he was planning to do. Masato then faced his palm toward the seawater and used his advanced alchemy spell. Himari thought he was probably doing something crazy again since it was Masato after all. Suddenly, powdered grains flew out of the ocean and formed a white round ball. Himari asked if it was salt. Masato confirmed it and asked what was wrong. Himari wondered if he was trying to save money on salt by using alchemy. Masato said he was just worried about carrying around money. Himari told him that alchemy was not something to use so casually. She complained that he always went overboard with ingredients. Then, Masato remembered something and asked Himari to do something for him. Himari asked what it was, and Masato asked her to gather some hops. He said he wanted to make something. Soon after, Himari went to the fields with something Masato had asked for earlier. She showed him some hops she had found and asked what he planned to do with them. Since it was Masato, she assumed it was another one of his crazy ideas. Masato couldn't deny it, she was absolutely right. This time he wanted to make soy sauce, wheat flour, and beer. He had already gotten the yeast he needed from the bread shop, and now he had most of the ingredients for a tempura meal and some homemade beer. Just by looking at his face, Himari could tell he was up to something again. She excitedly said she wanted to try everything too, but Masato told her to be patient. He wasn't finished yet. There was still one more thing to do. He took out the dubbing card he had found in the dungeon. Curious, Himari asked what he was planning to duplicate. Masato then used the card to copy the greenhouse. When she asked what he planned to grow, he searched for something, found it, and added a drop of the growth enhancer. In an instant, the plant grew so huge that it completely buried Masato. Surprised, Himari asked what it was. Masato casually told her it was an ingredient for soy sauce. She couldn't believe something like that could turn into a seasoning. Masato explained that he still needed to do a few more things before it was ready. Then he asked her to come with him to town for a while. Masato and Himari went to a realtor's office where a young woman asked what they were looking for. Masato said he wanted a vacant lot. The woman handed him a catalog to browse. Curious, Himari asked why he needed an empty lot. Masato planned to build a factory since he had gathered all the necessary ingredients. He was finally able to use his master-level architecture skills again. After looking through the options, he picked a piece of land that cost 3.2 million ethers. The woman asked if he wanted to take out a loan and if he needed an appointment with a guarantor. She also mentioned that he could use an item as collateral. Since Masato didn't have enough money, he decided to apply for a loan. He pulled out a card and asked if it could be used as collateral. The moment the woman saw it, she panicked. She couldn't believe she was looking at a wyvern circulation card, one of only 5 in existence. She was shocked that Masato was willing to use something so rare just to buy land. Masato explained that it was the only thing he had, but the woman never expected something this valuable. Meanwhile, Himari and a nearby Dryad didn't even seem surprised. Masato noticed that Himari looked oddly proud of herself, which confused him. The woman became flustered, unsure where to store the card safely. After that, Masato and Himari left for their next destination. Masato and Himari arrived at the piece of land they had borrowed. Himari asked how Masato was making the seasoning. In response, he raised his palm and used his master-level architecture skill. A bright light appeared in the middle of the town. Masato imagined a factory setup, the first floor for drying and husking wheat, the second for milling it into flour, the third for making soy sauce, and the fourth for brewing beer. He was grateful for researching food manufacturing while job hunting after graduation. The details of factory equipment and processes were still fresh in his mind. In an instant, a building appeared on the empty lot. Himari tried to stay calm, believing she had gotten used to Masato's absurd abilities. However, as she looked at the newly constructed 4-story building, she couldn't help but shout in confusion. She pointed at it and asked what it was. The two went inside and Masato observed that each floor was built just as he had imagined. With this, his preparations were complete. Himari, still puzzled, asked if this was what he had been talking about. Masato confirmed and said they would continue after the harvest in 2 days. He asked her to return to the field then because he wanted to show her something. Still confused, Himari asked what he meant. 2 days later, Masato applied the 3rd dose of growth enhancers to the alhilda mushrooms. Himari was surprised to see how big they had already grown. Masato said they were now large enough to be seen with the naked eye. Himari hoped her mother could wait a little longer. After that, they checked the wheat field. Masato asked the Dryads to make it rain growth enhancers, and they happily agreed. The wheat grew faster and looked healthier. Masato was amazed to see that it was already ready for harvest. To be sure, he examined it closely. The wheat had turned into something special. It had an extremely low glycemic index, and its carbohydrates could be absorbed without insulin, which meant it wouldn't cause blood sugar spikes. This made it safe for diabetic patients to eat. Even its taste had improved. Masato was shocked by how incredible the wheat had become. Himari believed it was all thanks to the Dryads. Masato thanked them for their hard work, and then they headed to the factory. Himari was excited because they would finally get to use the strange machine she had seen before. On the first floor of the factory, the wheat was dried and had its husks removed. Himari was amazed and asked if simply putting the wheat into the machine was enough. Masato said it was automatic, but she didn't understand what he meant. He then asked if she was okay and told her it was time to store everything away. After that, he stored all the wheat, which ended up weighing 7.3 tons. He had only expected to harvest 5 tons per acre. Himari thought the extra amount might have been because of the Dryads. Since they had more than enough, Masato decided to start processing it and placed all the ingredients on their respective floors. As the machines worked, Himari watched in confusion and asked if they really just had to wait for everything to be done automatically. Masato confirmed that she was right. However, Himari doubted whether they were actually making food. To explain, Masato went over how each floor had a different purpose. The 4th floor was for fermenting and filtering beer. The 3rd floor handled soy sauce production using a Moromi tank and a compressor. The 2nd floor was for making flour, where roller mills and sifters were installed. On the first floor, machines automatically dried and removed the husks from the wheat. Himari called the production scale outrageous. She had thought they were simply making food, but instead Masato had created revolutionary equipment. Masato wondered if she was only interested in having fun. He suggested that she not worry too much about the process and just look forward to the final products. After all, he assured her, Masato quickly noticed that the soy sauce malt was finally ready. The girls got excited, already imagining the delicious food they would get to eat, but their excitement didn't last long. Masato told them that the soy sauce malt still needed a full year to mature. Seeing their disappointment, he reassured them that he had found a skill that might solve the waiting problem. He used a skill called temporal tuning on the bottle of soy sauce malt. The liquid inside turned black. The girls gasped in shock and worriedly asked if it had gone bad. Masato calmly explained that the black color was completely normal for fully matured soy sauce. Himari understood his explanation, but she couldn't believe that such a powerful spell was used just to age food. She found it ridiculous. Normally, temporal tuning was only meant to stop or speed up time by a few minutes, not to skip ahead an entire year. Masato, however, wondered if that was really a limit since his method had worked just fine. Himari and the Dryads were left speechless. Masato asked if what he did was really that surprising. Himari then pointed out that if he had such an ability, he wouldn't need growth enhancers anymore. Masato explained that there was actually a big difference. Growth enhancers help plants grow faster, while temporal tuning only speeds up time. If used on plants, they might just wither instead of growing properly. Himari noticed Masato separating the mixture into 2 containers. He said there was still one more step left. Since the other part also tasted good, he decided to keep some aside. He then heated the raw soy sauce, completing the process. Himari and a Dryad rushed in, but Masato stopped them. He said there was still another preparation to do, and he had something to take care of outside. Masato walked over to the empty lot and casually used advanced alchemy. Bottles started forming from the ground. Seeing so many appear at once, Himari wondered where they had come from. Masato explained that the bottles would be used for something being made on the 4th floor. Meanwhile, the wort inside the fermentation tank had temporal tuning used on it, turning it into young beer. Then he lowered the temperature and used temporal tuning again. After filtering the liquid and bottling it, the beer was finished. Himari was amazed and said she had never seen a drink like this before. Masato assured her it was high quality and told her to look forward to it. He then asked the others to help him bring the wheat flour from the 2nd floor. After that, it was time to cook. Somehow Himari had also changed outfits and was now wearing an apron. She said she wanted to closely observe the secret behind Masato's famous cooking. Masato and Himari began making snacks together. First, Masato mixed eggs, cold water, and flour to make the batter. Then he coated the freshly caught seafood along with some store-bought sweet potatoes. Once the oil was hot, he started frying the ingredients. He also flicked some batter into the oil to create small crispy shapes for decoration. Next, he boiled the edamame. Since they had already sliced the sashimi, they could plate it however they liked. After arranging everything, Masato added the final touch. He sprayed something called the Spirit Mediator. This special spray allowed fairies to share meals with humans. With that, the food was finally ready. Himari was amazed because she had never seen food like this before. Everyone quickly gathered around the table, eager to eat. They all took their first bite. Masato thought it was the best sashimi he had ever tasted. Himari mentioned that the seasoning matched well with the fish fillets. She called it a mold extract. Masato corrected her, saying it was soy sauce. Then he tried the kraken meat and was surprised by how good it tasted. He couldn't help but exclaim that both the sashimi and tempura were amazing. Himari was in awe. She never imagined she would have such an incredible meal. Masato then told her there was still one special dish left. For the grand finale, he brought out a bottle of beer, a pair of clear mugs, and a plate of boiled edamame. Himari had never seen such a frothy drink before, and even the Dryad looked confused. Masato proudly explained that it was a type of alcohol called beer, and that pairing it with edamame made the perfect combination. Himari took a silent sip, and her eyes widened in surprise. She found it delicious and said she had never tasted anything like it. The flavor and aroma were perfect for her. Masato also commented on how smoothly it went down. He thanked her for gathering the hops. Himari decided to collect more hops, and Masato was grateful since he had started growing them in the fields. They then tried the edamame, which was rich and full of flavor. Himari couldn't stop eating it, saying it practically melted in her mouth. Masato never thought he would get to enjoy such delicious food and the best beer right after reincarnating into another world. He was glad he had built the factory and prepared everything. Now he wanted to drink as much beer as he could in this life. Feeling tipsy, he still managed to apologize to Himari for ending the night early. He wobbled as he walked but somehow landed on his bed gracefully, even pulling a blanket over himself. Himari was shocked at the sight, while the Dryads gave him a perfect score. Masato could never have imagined living a life like this back when he was a corporate worker. But now he knew. He had finally found happiness. Himari tried to wake him up. The next morning, Masato woke up feeling refreshed. Because of his high vitality, he didn't have a hangover. With magic making life easier, he found this world very convenient. Then he noticed that Himari was missing. A Dryad told him she had gone out the night before. The previous night, Himari had tried to wake Masato, but he was completely passed out. She noticed the dirty utensils they had used and decided to clean up as a way to thank him for the delicious food. Using her purification skill, she made everything spotless. Excited, she then flew out to look for more hops. After hearing this from the Dryad, Masato understood what had happened. He realized that Himari had been working non-stop. Even though she was a dragon, he wondered if he had been pushing her too hard. But when he saw how clean everything was and how eager she had been, he knew it only means she really loved the food. If Himari enjoyed the beer and soy sauce this much, then Masato believed the rest of the world would too. He decided to sell some to the guild along with his crops. When Masato arrived at the guild, it was clear he wasn't welcomed warmly. Carol told him to step inside, but she glared at him while doing so. She said she had something to discuss with him. For the first time, Masato felt intimidated by Carol and agreed without question. Once inside, he nervously asked what she wanted to talk about. Instead of answering right away, Carol revealed a massive pile of gold coins. She explained that this money came from the Adventurers Guild because someone had already bought the Cinderella shoe. The total amount was 27.4 million ether. Even Masato was shocked. Carol admitted she had never seen so much money before and asked what kind of item had been sold. Masato then explained that the shoe was highly desired by nobles and even royals. To protect his personal information, he had asked the Agriculture Guild to handle the sale through the Adventurers Guild. He also mentioned that he preferred not to deal with nobles because they seemed troublesome. However, since the guild respected confidentiality, he felt safe. Carol finally understood the situation. She admitted she was caught off guard, but was glad to know that Masato trusted the guild that much. Masato then told her he had come to sell some crops. Surprised that he already had another harvest, Carol told him to head to the warehouse while she called an appraiser. Like always, the old man came to check the crops that Masato had brought. As expected, he was surprised. He found the wheat, which was safe for diabetics to eat, to be an amazing discovery. He then turned to Carol and questioned whether she was really selling normal seeds. Annoyed, Carol told him not to suspect her since there was no way special seeds like that could be sold on the market. Masato hoped they wouldn't start arguing. After thinking for a moment, the old man came to a conclusion. Dryads really did exist, and for some reason, they had been helping Masato all along. The Dryads were shocked that their secret was discovered, while Masato quietly laughed to himself. Carol then confirmed that the new batch of crops would only be sold through select merchants. For nobles with diabetes, this wheat would be a groundbreaking discovery. The old man then told Carol to store them safely before Cole returned. At that moment, Masato asked them to give Cole something when he arrived. He pulled out more cards just like before and said Cole could use them however he wanted. Carol and the old man were stunned. They had just received 9 legendary Wyvern free ride cards. Without hesitation, the old man ordered Carol to lock them in the guild's most secure safe. Masato casually admitted that he could get as many of those cards as he wanted from the dungeon. He suddenly felt a little bad for making them so tense. To lighten the mood, he showed them new products he had made from his crops, seasonings and alcohol. He asked them to try the products and see if they could be sold. Carol and the old man were shocked that Masato had even started making new goods, but they were excited to be the first to taste them. Seeing their mood improve so easily, Masato felt relieved. They went to the dining area, and Masato started with the seasoning. He asked them to try it with the fish fillet. Carol found the smell of the seasoning unique. It was both sweet and savory. The old man suddenly recognized the scent and quickly used appraisal on it. He discovered that it was called Masato's special soy sauce. It contained ultraflavonoids which had strong DNA repairing properties and could help prevent cancer. Carol realized that this soy sauce could also be sold as a health food. The old man expected nothing less from Masato. Even Masato himself didn't know it had such an effect. Either way, he asked them to taste it. The two took a bite of the fish fillet dipped in the soy sauce and chewed silently. Carol was shocked. She never thought sashimi could taste this good. She had always believed that salt with lemon or olive oil was the best way to eat it, but now she was sure this soy sauce would be the next big thing. The old man agreed, calling the soy sauce a game changer. Masato was happy to see that soy sauce and sashimi were a perfect match in this world. Then the old man noticed the squid and asked what kind of dish it was. Masato casually told him it was Kraken from the Sea. The two were stunned to see a Calamity-class monster being served as food. Masato simply said it was delicious, and that he planned to catch more. The old man trembled at how Masato treated such a powerful creature as just another ingredient. Carol took a bite and immediately praised how good the squid tasted. The old man felt lucky to have lived long enough to experience such a rare meal. Masato was glad that his soy sauce had become a big success. He served a bottle of beer next. The appraisal showed it was an anti-aging beer. It had ultra polyphenols, which helped slow aging. Drinking up to 633 milliliters per day could reduce the negative effects of alcohol, making it healthier. Drinking it moderately starting in your 20s could even extend your life by up to 1.5 times. The old man regretted not discovering this drink earlier in his life. Masato offered to use a detox spell if getting drunk would affect their work. The two guild staff then drank the beer. The old man was surprised by how smooth it was and said he had never tasted beer like that before. Carol also enjoyed it since she rarely had the chance to drink chilled alcohol. Masato remembered that this world didn't have refrigerators. Carol felt thankful for the meal, saying it felt like eating at a high-class restaurant. The old man, as an appraiser, felt honored to experience it. Masato was glad to hear that and promised to increase his production. Carol asked where the soy sauce came from. Masato explained that it was made from wheat, soybeans, and koji, and fermented with microorganisms. The old man excitedly asked if these microorganisms were a new species Masato had discovered. Carol was surprised that Masato knew about biology and now thought he was unbeatable in every field. Masato said they were overestimating him. Carol wondered if it was okay for them to hear such valuable information. Masato said it was fine since he didn't plan to monopolize it. He then asked when Cole would return. Carol confirmed it would be in 3 weeks. For now, Masato promised to deliver wheat and said he would increase the production of soy sauce and beer, bringing them back in the next batch. He then asked if he could buy more wheat and soybean seeds. Masato had more money now, so he decided to pay off the land loan early. He went to the realtor's office and the girl was surprised to see him again. As he tried to explain that he came to pay, she started crying and said how happy she was. She told him to take the Wyvern card back because holding onto it was too stressful for her. Masato wondered if it was really that difficult. Now the factory land officially belonged to him. A Dryad asked what he planned to do next. Masato said he would plant the seeds he had just bought and would need their help. The Dryad agreed. He quickly prepared the soil and with his skill he planted the seeds. He tossed them across the field and they all spread out evenly. The Dryads were impressed by what they saw. Then he took out a familiar can, and the Dryads knew it was time for the growth enhancers. They offered to handle it, and the growth enhancer solution poured down from their clouds. Masato said that was enough, and since it was getting late, he suggested they head home for dinner. The Dryads were happy to hear that. The night had arrived, but Masato was still on his way home. He had bought eggs, garlic, tomatoes, and wheat flour at the market. Cooking dinner would be easy tonight. When he got home, one of the Dryads signaled him to be quiet. He walked to the living room and found Himari asleep on the couch. The quiet dragon was sound asleep this time. Seeing her sleep so peacefully, Masato realized he had been pushing her too hard with her tasks. He felt guilty. As someone who used to work in a tough corporate job, he didn't want to create an environment like those in bad companies. He asked the Dryad to get things ready quietly so they wouldn't wake her up. In the kitchen, Masato said he would make a no-water tomato pasta. The Dryad asked what that was, and he just told her to watch. First, he mixed flour and salt, then prepared a mixture of water, eggs, and olive oil. He combined everything and kneaded it well. Normally, it would take 2 hours, but with temporal tuning, Masato could speed things up. He then sliced the dough, and just like that, the noodles were ready. Using his superior alchemy, he created a pot. He added minced garlic, whole tomatoes, and the noodles straight into the pot. Since he didn't need water to boil the noodles, it was called no-water pasta. The moisture from the ingredients itself cooked the noodles, letting the tomato flavor soak in. Meanwhile, Himari woke up. When she saw Masato's back as he was cooking in the kitchen, she smiled brightly. She greeted him cheerfully, and Masato was surprised that she was awake so suddenly. She said she had smelled something delicious. Masato apologized for making her go out the night before and thought she must be tired. Himari said she was fine after taking a short nap. She also mentioned that dragons only sleep once a year. Masato was relieved and guessed he had been overthinking things. He told her dinner was almost ready and asked the girls to sit down. When Himari saw the pasta dish in front of her, she got excited. Masato wasn't finished yet. He added cheese, herbs, and the spirit mediator spray to the dish. Everyone took a bite, and Himari said it was delicious, especially the noodles soaked in tomato flavor. Masato said he used a special cooking method, and the noodles had the perfect texture. He also thought about how this world didn't have a pressure cooker yet and considered selling one. Everyone continued to enjoy their meal. After dinner, Masato suggested boiling some edamame and having some beer. Himari liked the idea. She thanked Masato for everything, especially his farm, which always had delicious food. Then Masato remembered something and asked her to check something on the farm with him. He said the mushrooms would soon be ready to harvest. Himari visited Masato's farm to check on the mushroom he had grown. But when she got there, Masato was missing. She looked around for him, and then heard his voice nearby. She was surprised to find him stuck inside the second greenhouse. Masato said the koji had started growing too much. Himari quickly pulled him out and asked what he had been doing. Masato thanked her for saving him and explained that he was trying to make more soy sauce. He stood up, said sorry for the trouble, and led Himari to where the mushrooms were growing. Himari looked happy. Masato asked if it was okay to take the mushroom outside. Himari said it was fine because the mushroom only needed special conditions while growing. Masato was relieved and said the mushroom had finally finished growing even though he made her wait. Himari's eyes lit up when she saw the alhildake mushroom. It was the main ingredient used to treat certain illnesses. She gently picked one up and looked a little sad. Then she thanked Masato and said that one mushroom was enough to make strong medicine. Masato decided to put the rest to good use. He asked how she would make the medicine. Himari said she just needed to mix the prepared ingredients in the right amounts, and she would handle the rest. Masato imagined something like a witch stirring a big pot. But instead, Himari put on gloves, used a pestle and mortar, and worked with lab equipment. She looked more like a scientist, carefully watching a test tube as she continued. Masato was surprised. It wasn't at all like what he had pictured. Watching her work with such skill, Masato was reminded again that Himari was really talented. It was easy to forget she was actually a dragon. He thought that if he had taken his own experiments more seriously back in university, maybe he'd be working at a good company by now. Just then, a strong smell pulled Masato out of his thoughts. The bad odor could only mean one thing. He quickly used a spell called Wide-Range Detox to clean the area. The gas that showed up was deadly to humans, twice as strong as the dangerous gas. Masato, now shaking a little, told Himari to be more careful. She apologized, saying she had forgotten because dragons were not affected by the gas. Masato still thought it was dangerous, so using his master-level architecture skill, he built a fume hood to remove any harmful gas, substances, or even living things in the air. He told her to keep working inside it. Himari apologized again and went in. Masato was finally able to relax. Even though he wasn't in real danger because of his high stats, it was still better to be safe. 3 hours later, Himari finished making the medicine for her mother. She then asked Masato if she could have one of the drinks he made at the factory. Masato handed her a bottle of beer and poured it into a mug. Himari drank it all at once and looked pleased. Masato wasn't surprised. To a dragon, beer probably felt like an energy drink. Then Masato asked if she was going to see her mother right away. She said yes and also asked Masato to come with her so she could introduce him as the person who grew the algae mushroom. Since he was in another world, Masato agreed. He wanted to see more places anyway, so he asked her to take him along. Masato and Himari quickly left and soon reached the mountains where Himari's sick mother was staying. The place was very cold, but Masato felt okay because his vitality stat was high. He had come alone, and if not for his skills, he might have gotten lost. While walking, he noticed something surprising. Some trees were glowing. One of the trees was shining with rainbow colors. When he used appraisal, it showed that the tree was called a gaming momifir. It glowed like that when someone with more than 1000 MP got close. It wasn't a normal tree, it was made using the genes of an ancient dragon. It could also reproduce faster than regular trees. Masato was amazed that an ancient dragon had created such a thing. Himari then told him it was her mother who made it. She said the tree was a failed attempt to replace a rare mushroom called the alhildake mushroom. Her mother had done many experiments. She showed Masato other failed ones too, like a bush that looked like coral and some strange bees. Masato realized that Himari's mother didn't just sit around waiting to die, she kept working and trying new things. Himari called for him, and they finally reached a cave. She said her mother was inside. When they entered a room, Masato was surprised to see someone lying on a bed. It was Himari's mother. She opened her eyes after hearing Himari's voice. She sat up slowly and moved her hand around, trying to touch something. Himari took her hand and told her she was back after a long time. Her mother smiled. Masato noticed her eyes weren't focused. He realized the white mage's disease had taken away her sight. Himari was confused and said the last time she saw her mother, she was in dragon form. Her mother explained that she changed into a human to make a certain device smaller. Masato used appraisal again. The device was an artifact made by an ancient dragon to clean magic. It also helped treat white mage's disease. If a dragon used it, it could live 10 years longer. But Masato thought 10 years wasn't a lot for dragons. Himari's mother said this was the best she could do. Himari held her mother's hand tighter and her mother asked what was going on. Himari then said that she had finally made the miracle medicine that could cure her. Her mother was silent for a moment, then shouted in shock. She asked loudly how Himari had done it. Himari said she just followed the theory. Then Himari introduced Masato to her mother. She told her that he was the one who grew the alhildake mushroom. Masato apologized for not introducing himself sooner and said he was a farmer. Himari's mother couldn't believe that a human farmer was able to grow alhildake mushrooms. Himari agreed it was surprising but asked her mother to drink the medicine first. Her mother could tell from Himari's voice that she was serious. She took the bottle, opened it, and drank the medicine. Right after she swallowed it, she felt better. The color in her eyes started to return and she said that she could now see again. She quickly grabbed a syringe and took some of her own blood. She shook it fast to check the result. When the test showed negative, she knew she was fully cured. Even Masato was surprised that the medicine worked so fast. Himari hugged her mother tightly and cried because she was so happy. Her mother apologized for making her worry and wiped her tears. Masato gave a big sigh of relief. Himari's mother looked at him, thanked him, and said sorry for doubting him. She said he had basically saved her life. Masato said she was very welcome. Now that she could see again, Himari's mother finally understood. She saw how Masato had tamed the Dryads, which was something almost no one could do. It was hard to believe someone was able to do that. She also couldn't figure out how much magic power Masato had. On top of that, he had successfully grown the mushroom. She was amazed and wondered how her daughter met someone like him. Himari didn't know how to explain it, so Masato spoke instead. He said he had gotten lost in the forest after many things happened, and by chance he met Himari. She helped him and took him to town, and that's how they became friends. Himari agreed and said they had never even fought. Himari's mother realized that because of that lucky meeting, she was now safe. She remembered that Masato had said he was a farmer. When she asked again, he confirmed it. Then she said she had something perfect for him and told him to follow her outside. When they stepped outside, both Masato and Himari were shocked. Their eyes widened and their mouths dropped open. In front of them was a piece of land floating in the air. Masato asked what it was. Himari's mother said it was called the floating continent, and it was his reward for growing the alhildake mushroom. She asked him to accept it. Himari asked her mother if she had ever had something like that before. Masato also asked how he was supposed to use it. Himari's mother told him to step onto the land. Masato jumped onto it. Then she told him to pour his magic into it. Masato opened his status window and saw that he had 10,500 MP. He decided to pour 5,000 MP into the land. Right away, a glowing magic circle appeared under his feet. The floating continent began to shake. Suddenly, the land grew so large that he couldn't even see the end of it. Masato was shocked and couldn't say a word. One of the Dryads asked if he was okay. Masato said he was, but he had poured in too much magic. He even wondered if he had buried a whole mountain and cave by accident. Himari's mother told Masato it was okay because he could always check things again when he came back. Masato jumped off the floating continent, and just like before, the land below looked smaller and smaller. After that, Himari's mother explained that the floating continent could grow bigger on the inside if magic was added to it. 1 acre of land appeared for every point of magic used, so even if it looked like a huge place when standing on it, its outside size stayed the same. She also said the land was great for farming, and with it, Masato could really improve his farming skills. Masato asked if it was really okay for him to take something so powerful. Himari's mother told him that she had made it when she was trying to grow a rare mushroom called the alhildake, but since she didn't need it anymore after she got better, she wanted Masato to have it. Masato thanked her for the gift. But she wasn't finished yet. She had one more thing to give him as a reward. She gave him a seed and said it came from the world tree. She said it was perfect for someone who had tamed Dryads. The Dryads got excited and asked Masato to take care of it. Masato was surprised to hear something so amazing. Himari's mother explained that the world tree had a strong connection with Dryads. Its fruit could help them grow and become much stronger. Masato didn't fully understand what she meant by greater heights, but for now he decided to plant the seed and use a growth enhancer on it. Suddenly, the world tree showed up as a small sprout, and Himari's mother was shocked. She said it should have taken at least 1,000 years before the tree could grow fruit. But Himari explained that Masato had used a growth booster for just 3 months. Masato didn't understand why she sounded so proud about it. He said they still had a long way to go, but he promised to take good care of the world tree for the Dryad's sake. He thanked Himari's mother for all her help. She said it was nothing and that no gift could ever be enough to repay him for saving her life. Himari and the Dryads were getting excited about the world tree. Masato couldn't believe he had just received something so incredible. He had always wanted to grow many kinds of crops, and now it looked like he finally could. He was excited to see what the future had in store for them. But one thing still bothered him. He had no idea how to explain everything to Carol when he went to buy seeds next time.